Hello, beautiful people. Just jumping on here really quickly to let you know that today's episode is a little bit different. It's a live panel recording from an event that I was running. It was a full-day training program around sales, storytelling, and the personal development side of being able to confidently put yourself out there to achieve your goals. So I invited a couple of guests to join me for a panel conversation and recorded it to turn it into an episode for the show so that all of you can join the journey with us. It does make episodes a little bit different. There are some cuts where questions are asked and a few other small bits and pieces. I lose a little bit of footage of me, but all of that's okay because you get all the juicy bits. So enjoy the episode. Let's get into it. Lovely to see you. I host a podcast called the Lost and Searching podcast, where we chat to incredible folks to help us figure out some answers to some things we feel a little bit lost about right now. We're joined by two incredible guests today that I'm going to let introduce themselves in just a second. And then we're going to get into this conversation, which is around storytelling and sales. We're not really covering much sales today, although we're talking about a lot of psychology that affects sales. And we're going to cover a little bit more specific storytelling stuff. And so I wanted today to ease us in to this conversation, to ease us into the rest of today, to the second half of today. So without further ado, let's get into it. If from both of you, I could have a quick intro, and because we're talking about storytelling, what is your story? Tash, would you like to go first?
Oh, I really wish I could have gone second.
Would you like to go second?
No. I'll
Ken,
go
would you
first,
like to
and
go
then the expert storyteller will go second. That's great.
No
That's
pressure.
what I want.
No pressure.
So, hi everyone. I'm Tash Rebuck. I'm a sales consultant, coach, trainer, basically whatever my clients need me to be, whatever their business needs. My ethos is just effectively everyone can fall in love with sales. Everyone can enjoy it. It's just about making sure you do it in your way, in the right way, and in a way that matches your business. My story, how long do I have? So I can give you a 30-second, a 2-minute, or a 5-minute.
Give me a 1.5 minute, just to make it annoying.
That's just not exactly what I practice. It's fine. So, a potted history. I always wanted to be an actor, and then I realised I'd like to not live with my parents for the rest of my life. So I looked up what are actors good at. One of the answers was sales. So I started off in a really traditional company. I worked building bespoke editions of Monopoly boards. So I travel around the UK and make different city editions. I then moved into the startup world because it was an exciting time to do so. Was part of a unicorn. There was 20 of us. 4 years later, there were 900. And then I did a few different head of sales, head of commercial roles, where I ended up in the positive impact space and actually did a volunteering project where I was a sales consult for a non-profit and realized that that was where my value was at those beginning stages when people really don't know what they're doing, don't know how to talk about sales, and I can get them excited about it, but also teach them the actual fundamentals. Sales are skills and there are ways to learn how to do it. That's me.
No pressure whatsoever. That was fantastic.
I know, I actually set myself up to look bad just so I could get you afterwards.
Talked about framing things, remember?
Exactly. So my name is Ken or Kenneth. I run a video-first personal branding agency called Scale Story. So we work with founders that are typically within the growth stage to help them better communicate what it is that they're doing on video. That's the corporate version. The real backstory to that is I spent many years working in lots of different businesses, filming sort of services and products. Got very bored of that and started asking people why they built these businesses. And the more they told me these stories about why they built the businesses, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Probably way more interesting than what we're filming right now. We should probably include this into our kind of main story. And then over years, that kind of then became the main thing that I would do. I joined the startup world probably about 4.5 years ago, I think now. And interestingly kind of saw that there was a level of ambition that I'd never seen before where someone could basically come into a space and say, hey, I've got this idea, I want to change the world, I just don't know how, and I'm going to do this every single day. And I was like, oh, I have this skill set where I can help people communicate these ideas to different audiences. What happens when these two things pair together? So kind of very early on realized that there is a really interesting divide between startups that kind of thrive and startups that die. And that kind of, I guess, gap was at an early stage, if you're able to communicate your idea well to the right audiences, then you're able to get funding, you're able to attract staff, you're able to do all sorts of wonderful things with it. But if you're not, you kind of fall to the wayside. And that's how the company was born.
And where I'd like to get us started is people who are really confused don't spend money, right? So what does clarity look like, and how do I make myself clear?
I will take it from a personal angle and share with you the process that I went through in starting this business. So like I said, very much kind of started about 4.5 years ago, and this was very much like a hobby. I would help startups outside of like my sort of 9 to 5 working with a startup. And then when I finally got round to actually putting the wrap around it, I didn't know how to actually position the business itself. So the version that you hear today is one that's been refined over many, many months. But at the beginning, I was like, we are Scale Story, we help startups, and we help them with video. And it's like, what kind of video? Oh, personal branding. Okay, but why personal branding? And that kind of went through loads of iterations. So to Seven's point, like, why was that a bad thing at the beginning? Well, I'd go and speak to people and say, hey, my name is Ken, our business is built to help you with, and they'd say, what? And I'd say, anything you want. And they'd go, okay, well, I don't really know what that means. Give it to me in my own words. And I had to spend loads of time trying to figure out what it is that they needed, and then try and offer a service off the back of that. And they kind of leave the conversation being like, I just spoke to a guy that does video and apparently can solve all my problems. Not really interested. So then over the months kind of refined what that messaging was, because I realized actually the difficulty wasn't the ability to do lots of different service for these different founders. It was actually in getting them to understand one simple thing at the very beginning and saying, look, we are solving for one core issue at the moment. If the core issue that you have right now is raising funds, then that is the core issue that we're going to solve with kind of video content. If the core issue you have is attracting staff, then that's what we'll do. And if the core issue happens to be attracting consumers, then that's what we'll look at. And that has transformed the business in the sense that nothing has changed on the back end. Still doing that kind of, okay, when it comes to getting founders in front of a camera, there are loads of different stories that we could share. However, the starting point has to be something that's very clear for both sides to say, I understand what we're doing, I know which way we're walking, and this is exciting. And I think that's, to your point about like why people won't buy, it's one part is not knowing what to buy, but also anything you've purchased in this life, whether it's a chocolate bar all the way through to a service, you have a level of excitement about it before you purchase. So that's my personal journey.
And I mean, yeah, I agree completely. It'd be awkward if I didn't. But
You can disagree if you want to, it's
we
fine.
might at some point, we might fight, but it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I think I've always likened it to if you walk into a restaurant and you're given a menu and it sort of slaps down on the table, it's about 50 pages and it covers every cuisine, every form of cooking, you know you're going to have a bad meal. You just know it. But if you walked into a restaurant and they handed you, and it was a 7-course taster menu, and they went, we've actually based this off, we've seen what you've posted on Instagram, what you have liked on and written Google reviews about, you know you're having an amazing meal there. And you have to think about the way that you communicate, especially when you're talking about a business or what you do as a person in that way. If you just, we are all very talented human beings. Everyone is. And so there's a lot that we can offer. But if we just throw that all out at people, yeah, they just don't know what to pick and there's too much. But if you take the time to get to know someone, what it is that then they need, how you fit into it, you can then explain yourself and what you do in a way that fits. And it's almost like you're made for them, you know, like your service sounds like it was created with them in mind. And also, often it comes down to brevity. Most people talk themselves out of a sale. If you have to over-explain what you do, it's probably too confusing. And if you have to validate what you do too much, you've not explained the value of it. So it really is, how much are you speaking? And have you gone past the point of getting that contract or making that relationship? And now they're just sat at you going, good Lord, just stop talking. I have no idea what you're going on about anymore.
I see it as a few stages of a conversation. And stage one is, I want to have a second conversation as a goal for that. how do I effectively do that? What needs to happen in that first touch point for a touch point 2 to happen? It's very unlikely, I'm assuming, you're going to have a sale at touch point 1. So,
No. I mean, like, it depends what the context is. I will say it's not impossible. Like, it can be. But let's say, I think like networking or things like this are a really great example. You meet people, you have a nice conversation. If they feel like you're selling to them, they do not want to have another conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately it always comes down to like the very harsh truth, which is people do not care what you do. They just don't care what your skill sets are or how amazing you are at it. They only care what it is that you'll do for them and the results that they get. So if you're going into a conversation and you need to move it to the next stage, you have to make sure that you have made the person you're speaking to go, oh my God, I need to have another conversation with this person because my life, my business, my whatever will be better if I do so.
earlier today we were talking about this concept called reactance, which is a psychological concept that breaks down why when someone asks us to do something, we suddenly don't want to do it. It's limiting of freedoms. As soon as I feel like my choice has been limited, I shut it down, I run away, I hide, I hate you, I don't want to talk to you, right? And it feels like you're describing this like really pushy, aggressive, almost sales version of that, version of a salesperson where they're really trying to get something from you. And as a result, the assumption is, maybe rightly, my freedoms are gone if I let this happen, and so I'm trying to run away from it. That brings me to my next question, which is, I think as a result of experiencing that so much, a lot of people feel icky about doing sales, right? I've experienced so many aggressive salespeople who don't care about me, so many like really annoying DMs on LinkedIn that are irrelevant to me, or they haven't done their research and asked me about, etc. That I'm assuming I'm going to be the same, so I'm just not going to do it, or I'm going to try and actually end up being even worse as a result. So first question, how do we overcome that feeling of ickiness when we are trying to do the sales, if we're a business person or even just, a salesperson?
So I think the first thing is always just you have to think about the approach. If you don't like the way that people approach you, then don't do it that way. If you don't like when people send you automated, non-personalized messages, don't do that yourself. Take the time to do it in a way that feels natural. And it might be that there are so many different ways to do cold outreach. I mean, you can go networking, you can do cold calling, you can send a handwritten letter. There are lots of different options. So find what works for you and try that. Try a bit of everything, to be honest. But I think when it comes to reaching out to people and why sales feels so icky, I think that often it comes down to a fear of rejection and a fear of reputation. If I send my dream contact or any contact too many messages or an annoying message, they'll never want to speak to me again. They'll tell everyone in the industry I'll never get another job. Chances are every single one of us, I don't know if everyone may have not checked their emails this morning, but let's say it was Friday, every single person would have gotten an annoying sales message on LinkedIn or email, right? Probably really annoying, and you're like, ugh, they're the worst salesperson in the world. What was their name? What were they selling? What was the company's name? You don't remember. And that's the thing, if you're not of interest to people and they find you annoying, because it does happen, they just won't remember who you are. So actually, it's a lot about our own ego that we have to just get over. And if you can't get over it just by going, well, I just need to get over it, start thinking, can I get over it to get what I want out of life? If it's growing a business or if it's starting a business, can I get over my own discomfort to grow my business? Is that something I'm capable of? And if it's not, there's a lot of internal and how much you want this to happen that you need to talk to yourself about, because founding a business is always pushing yourself to do things you're uncomfortable with.
And so we talked about this the other day. As a result of what you just said, how many times is too many times to follow up with someone who has just ghosted you?
This is always a really dangerous question because none of you are going to connect with me on LinkedIn after this, and I really hope you do. So pre-meeting, statistically, if you haven't hit between 7 and 14 touch points, people will not have a further conversation with you. So if you have not sent at least 4 or 5 messages to them, if they haven't seen something that you've posted on LinkedIn or social media, if you haven't liked or commented on anything they've done, if you send one single message, you're never going to get a response. Like pretty much 0 to 0.5% chance of a response. It's all about the follow-up. So I will, in my outreach, do 5 to 6 actual messages with a mix of all the other things in there as well.
Mix of all the other things being...
Liking, commenting, posting, making sure that like maybe someone I know knows them and I'm like, hey, have you mentioned me to them recently? Touch points, as many as I can. Yeah. Post-meeting, there is no limit. If I've pitched to you and you've told me you're interested and it's just a case of you're going to give me an answer, it's actually really rude of you to not tell me yes or no. So I will always fight for my business. I will do anything and everything I have to make it a success for myself, for my family, and for my life. I will follow up 10 times. I don't care. I don't care. And I've only once in my entire career, and this has happened to tens of thousands of people that I've done sales to, only one person has turned around and said, I'm not going to work with you because you followed up too much with me. One person. I'll take that for like a 70% conversion rate.
Which is a very high conversion rate, by the way. If anyone knows anything about conversion rates, that's a very high conversion rate. Anything to add, Ken?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's like, it's interesting, this whole like concept of like being too much almost, or this idea that like if you do too many follow-ups, it's a bad thing. I think to your point earlier on about like how if you take the examples that you liked and the examples that you haven't liked when other people have pitched to and sold to you, one of the main things is sometimes life gets in the way. So a lot of times you will message somebody and it will show that they've read it and things are happening. They might be busy with work, they might be busy with doing a big project and they say, look, once I finish this, get over this mountain, I'm going to get back to this person. Or something unfortunate might have happened within their personal life and they just can't attend the way that they used to. So I say this at the same time, recognizing for myself that I need to do it more. There are people that genuinely would appreciate you reaching out again and saying, hey, is this a go or is it not a go? And there's nothing wrong in being sort of candid about it and just saying, look, I'm not trying to chase you forever. I'm just genuinely trying to understand, because being left in limbo isn't something that anybody wants. And you don't have to, these are human interactions we're having, right? So you don't have to overthink it too much. Sometimes the email could be, hey, just checking if this is a go. Let me know when you have a chance, or let me know this week, or whatever it is that you want to do. So yeah, I think that's like kind of my approach.
So how would you recommend one deals with the unhelpful emotions that arise as a result of being ignored? I think for a lot of us, right, we take the example from our personal life, like if your best friend or your partner just straight up ignores you, you're really angry at them. But in professional context, it actually happens all the time. You can have this empathy. How do I immediately deal with the unhelpful emotional reaction that puts me into maybe even into survival state? We were talking at the beginning of today about emotions that are in survival state versus emotions that are in creation state, right? If I'm really in a really healthy place, I'm empathetic, great. If I need to pay my bills this month or next month or whatever my timeline is because of whatever my business, and this person hasn't gotten back to me, now I'm stressed, oh, I'm angry at them, now I'm in fear mode, in survival mode, you know, I'm attaching a lot of weight to whether that person replied to me, whether the investor conversation went well or whatever it is. How do you emotionally deal with the inevitable ups and downs of the sales process? Tash?
So sales is always a roller coaster. I mean, no matter what, you can be the top salesperson in your team and there will be months where you don't hit target for whatever reason. I mean, like sometimes it's completely out of your control. You can be doing all the right things and it's just nothing comes through that month. And so my advice is always you've got to celebrate every single win, every single time. And like, especially as a business owner, we don't celebrate wins. Yeah. And so I have a thing where I have a little deal dance. And I've got to do it every single time. Because if I don't, I'll just go, oh, new contract, that's nice, and then I'm on to my next thing. Well, where's the joy in that? Why? how am I celebrating? So celebrate every single little win. If it's not getting contracts yet, it's, you know, getting a new partnership or going to a networking event you maybe wouldn't have gone to, or attending something like this today, and just celebrate those wins, because there is always going to be a huge amount of rejection, no matter what. And so, you know, it's really unhelpful, but you've just got to get over it, because you are going to get rejected, and no business is perfect, and you just have to read all the history of all the, you know, how many times a book gets rejected by different publishers and blah, blah, blah. You do have to keep going. And so, yeah, it's very unhelpful. It feels like my dad is giving this advice, but a little bit, you have to get over it and just push yourself.
I really want to know what your celebration dance is. Nope, it's personal.
If anyone spends money, we'll see it. So
Yeah, exactly. If anyone signs a contract with me after this, I will do my deal dance in front of all of you.
Ken, anything to add?
yeah, it's interesting that you said the celebration dance, because a few months ago I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Seven, and in that introduction, you were hosting. This is plugged. You were hosting a session on energy and how that's transferred into calls and conversations, and how difficult it is in person. There's a bit more of a feel, but on calls, sometimes it can get a bit like you're in this kind of mindset of, oh God, another call, and if you're pitching, that's really difficult, so on and so forth. And there's a piece of advice, this is literally the reason why I spoke to you after, where Seven said, sometimes you just have to move your body physically before going into the call to kind of reset your energy. And he's like, if you need to dance, dance. And I was like, do you know what, actually? I'd probably have like suppressed that part of me a lot more. Like before, 100% something happens and I'm like, I'm just gonna dance for no reason. Like, why not? So I think it speaks very much to what you're saying here. Like, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, being a founder is getting punched in the face every single day and then saying, hey, let's go at it again. And knowing that, it just means that the celebrations are even more special than if you had a 9 to 5, you get a promotion, you say, yay, I did well, and now someone's gonna reward me. Being a business owner is fantastic because you literally get to define what happens tomorrow. And we forget this every single day, that we're saying, okay, this company wants to do a deal with us and it's not as much money as I wanted it to be. It's like, you get to choose, you wrote the contract for that person to come into your business and to work with you and choose that partnership and so on and so forth. So no, 100% agree on the celebration, very much on the kind of being active. And I'd say a third thing actually, I think, which is good, is to keep a journal or log of it somewhere. It doesn't have to be a Dear Diary every single night, but one of the things that I do is I will, the photo from today, for example, that has gone onto iCloud, wherever it's gone. At the end of the month, I'll just scroll through my photos and I'll just drag the ones that I'm like, oh, this is something to celebrate. And then at the end of each month, I'm like, oh, lots of really cool things have happened. This is nice to celebrate. And then back to emails. But
I like that.
yeah.
And then actually, sorry, you took a breath and I'm coming in whilst you do. I always give this example because usually what happens is if you are emotionally drained by being rejected and no one's responding to you, you just stop following up. That's usually what people do. Think about it this way. Whatever you are selling, whatever you're talking to someone about, chances are they are speaking to your competitor. That's always the case. So week 1, you send your first follow-up, so does your competitor, but they're busy, so they just don't look at it. Week 2, you and your competitor both send a follow-up email, but this buyer is on holiday now, so they don't hear from you. Week 3, you send another one, so does your competitor, but their child is sick, the buyer's child is sick, so again, they're not looking at their emails. You're really uncomfortable at this point, and you're like, they don't want to hear from me, they're rejecting me, blah, 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 I don't want to do it anymore, it's going to hurt my feelings. So you don't send another message, your competitor does. The buyer has not spoken to you in a month. They do not remember who you are. They don't remember how nice you are and how wonderful you are and how experienced you are. Who they do remember is this fucker who've sent a 4th email. So you just have to say to yourself, will I send one more email over my competitor? Can I get over this discomfort and this feeling of rejection to win over my competitor, because I know I can do a better job? And the answer should always be yes.
One of my past podcast guests shared something really, really great about this, which ended up being one of the most viewed social media clips. So people liked it, where he asks the question, "What would your nemesis do?" So, should I write that third email, what would your nemesis do? They wouldn't just write the third email. They'd be on the phone already. You're still thinking about it. They'd be on the phone. Yeah. Right? Even like at home, I'll do the dishes later. Your nemesis would have cleaned the whole house, whatever. Like, how would your greatest competitor be operating instead? And then, by the way, your greatest competitor is you. The only person worth comparing yourself to is you in 10 years' time. The version of you you most want to be, what would that person be doing if they were competing with me? And that helps me, maybe not as much as it should, but that does help me. It's really powerful, I think. We're talking a lot now about top of funnel. You mentioned this thing, 7 to 14 touch points. I think Daniel Priestley has a model at this, which is like 7, 11, 4, something like that. I think 11 touch points across 4 channels. I don't remember what the 7 is, but
7 hours. I think it's 7 hours of content or 4 hours of content. Can't remember which way around it is.
I think it's 4 different platforms or something like that. But so, I mean, obviously someone might only be on LinkedIn and email, and that's 2 touch points. But the idea that there's quite a lot going on here. The reason he uses that model is because a lot of people use content as part of their top of funnel now. Ken, you're really in the content space. Do you recommend content as a great lever for absolutely everyone to pull, as a recommendation for everybody?
This is the part where I say no and you all just go home. I kind of split it into 2 things. Like, part of my job is sitting and talking to founders and understanding if content is going to be a viable option for them. And sometimes the answer is no. And the reason why the answer is no is based on the fact that the outcome that they want, content is not going to solve, or they're just not in a position where they want to be in front of a camera and they have to find another way around that, right? So I think content's a fantastic lever, but I think the starting point for it is having like a goal and kind of orientating yourself around what is it that I want to achieve. So putting this into context, if someone were to, in this room, say, hey, look, I want to get 50,000 users in the next 2 weeks, and they come to me and say, hey, I want you to make us, I found a video that gets us 50,000 people. It's like, okay, great. If we were to make this ideal video today, so it's filmed and it's out, and you export it, where are you going to put it? Oh, we'll put it on LinkedIn. Okay. How many followers do you have on LinkedIn? 13. So do you believe that a video that you're going to spend money on today is going to get you 50,000 followers? Yeah, because everyone can like and reshare it, and it's like, okay, we've got to bring you down to some sort of reality. So I think content's a great lever, but you have to know what you're leveraging. You have to know exactly what you're pulling on. And I think the first point of the conversation is very much based around, okay, what are you trying to get to, and what is the best path to get there? And the shortest. How can we not spend time, effort, and money on something that doesn't make sense? Let's make sure we're spending it in the right direction.
Okay. And in this content you're creating, ideally some story is being told. It feels like that's what we're getting to here, regardless of where you are, maybe even in those touch points, in the emails or DMs, there's some level of story somewhere. How do you choose what to put in the story? Like, what is most important to go into the story that makes it a good story? Because there is such a thing as oversharing. There's such a thing as giving people information that they don't want or don't care about that doesn't actually help with that clarity that we mentioned earlier, right? So how do you recommend going about crafting a story that hits the beats it needs to hit? What are those beats and how do you go about that?
I'll take the question in 2 parts. So one being like why story, I guess, and the second part being kind of a potential framework for that. The landscape of marketing has changed over the last sort of 10, 15 years radically, in the sense that all of the things we've been talking about today are psychology. They're all based around psychology and how we like to perceive things and how we like to kind of take things in. 10, 15 years ago, you could put an advert on the TV and say, this Casio watch is the best watch ever, you're going to feel great. Or Gillette, the best a man can get. And we all go out and buy Gillettes and everyone's happy. That doesn't work anymore because an advert like that will get pulled down straight away, is the first thing. People don't want to be sold to even more, so things have to be more personalized. So the reason why story, not that it hasn't been important, people just weren't leveraging it as much back in the days because they could easily get away with just saying, I've got a great product or a service, you definitely need to buy it, otherwise you're going to miss out. And it was all based on FOMO. Stories come more to the forefront because it's what we've always looked for. The psychology of human beings is, give me a bit of context of who you are, what you have, and then allow me to understand a bit more of why I should buy into you, or your product, or your business, or your service, so on and so forth. So I think that's where story comes in. Then to the second part of that question of like, what does a good story look like? Looking at this theme of psychology, it's selflessness. If you are to tell a good story, it's one that invites others to understand your world within their own perspective. So there is no point in me coming into this room and speaking to you about the types of cameras that we use and the types of formats that we export in. There are people on my team who love that sort of stuff, and I do too. But that's not within most of everyone's world here, so I don't speak in that terminology. If I were at, I don't know, Sony conference and every single person there was a videographer, then yeah, 100% these things would be flying. So I think what makes a really good story is understanding your audience is the first point, really kind of knowing that if it's clients that you're going after, what are their deepest pain points, what are the things they're really looking for, what would make a positive transformation for them, and including that. And going back to that selflessness, stop saying I. Like, start sharing short stories about what you're doing in the context of whoever's going to benefit from it, and include what that looks like in the future. So if we were to take Gillette as an example, the best a man can get is the old version. The new version would be looking at our audience is tired of razor bumps. They're tired of constantly having to buy razor sticks over and over again because they're useless. Tired of not really buying something that they can be confident in. And the story that's wrapped around that would then be something along the lines of, okay, imagine a world in which you had one razor for the next 3 years. That is still the same, it's still selling the same thing, it's just flipping it on its head to say, it's not about us, it's imagine a world for you that is fantastic. So that's kind of the angle I take of storytelling.
Anything you'd like to add?
I think it's an interesting one because it harks back to one of the first pieces of advice that I was given when I started my consultancy. So someone said to me, don't be a company, be you, make yourself the brand. And I went, that's wonderful advice, fuck off. And branded under TR Sales Consultancy. Yeah. And got someone on Fiverr to make like a T and an R mixed together. And as I grew, I realised that was the wrong decision. Because I'm not TR Sales Consultancy. I'm not some faceless corporate whatever. That's not who I am. If you work with me, it's me. You get unfiltered me. And it's a lot. But it's the reality. So now if you go onto my website, you'll see that it's my face everywhere. There's a little cartoon version of me. It's just
literally your logo. I literally looked at it the other day. Your logo is a cartoon version of your face.
It is, and it's adorable. And did it take me a lot to allow that to be the case? 100%. I would like to not be seen by people. But I realized that people weren't buying me because I'm really, really good at sales, although that is objectively true. They were buying me because they liked me. Yeah. They liked the energy that they brought. They liked the way I talk about sales. They liked the way I approach it. It's not that I know all the fancy tools or have a fancy camera or whatever. It's who I am and my story. So yeah, that is the biggest and best piece of advice I ignored right at the beginning of starting my business.
So what I've only just realized, because I'm silly, is that what we've actually been talking about this whole time is personal branding.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
I do think it's thrown around a lot. Build your personal brand. Do a bunch of content and build your personal brand. And a lot of the folks that are some of the biggest business influencers, they did the business part first. And then they got other people to help them with the brand part. So I guess the question is, how can absolutely anybody start to leverage personal brand and integrate that into what they're doing without loads of money, loads of equipment, loads of time? Because it can take a lot of time if you're doing it yourself too. How can anyone leverage personal brand? Yeah.
Let me start off of, so this is how I would undermine my own business. This is how I do it. No, I think it's important to kind of look at it from the perspective that personal branding is, the emphasis is very much put on the second part which is everyone's like, I need a brand, I need to be seen. But actually it's the first part, which is probably the easiest task that you have. Every single person in this room has multiple stories that they've lived in this life and have gotten them to where they've got to. So when it comes to personal branding, all you're really doing is just sharing stories of your life. Today I went to an event with 7, met 2 crazy people that talked about personal branding and sales, and apparently they love
rude.
it. Like,
One crazy person.
exactly.
Which one? Find out next time.
So if I were to take it from the perspective of if I didn't have anything, so 1, no knowledge of personal branding, 2, no equipment to film things or to get things out there, I would always go for the lowest hanging fruit and say, okay, what is the one thing that I can do now? Well, if I can text, I can type. So I can write a text post about something. That's the lowest hanging fruit. If I want to go up from there, I can do an image post and then we can graduate. So if we're starting off with the text post, what do you post about? What's the first thing you post about? Well, interestingly, the thing that's brought you all here today is the idea of building a business, or that you are currently building a business or you're growing your business. Whatever goal that you have in mind to share with the world that you're doing on one-to-one situations, where today you've done introductions and said, hey, this is me, this is my business, you're always welcome to do that online. In fact, the world of LinkedIn does it every single 3 months, which is something that happens all the time, which is a whole other topic. So for starting again, I'd start by just introducing, hey, this is me, this is the vision I see for the world in the context of your business, of course. And I'm really keen to connect with other people, because actually that's what you're doing behind closed doors anyway. So going back to that original point, personal brand is about you as a person. What are the things that you're already doing? Start talking about them. The lens or the scope that you have with that is very much of, this is me as a business, rather than this is me on a Sunday morning when things are a little bit slow. This is you putting yourself out to the world. And then once you started that journey, you can then look into other things like, okay, how can I share more about my journey and my growth and the ups and downs, or just the ups? Again, it's your choice because it's personal. What's more interesting about you and your brand is your persona, you as a person.
You can accept if you are good or bad at these things. People get sales and marketing really confused, and I think that this conversation itself, we've really talked about both but they are very separate. I am good at sales, I'm not good at marketing. I use a 23-year-old to do my marketing for me. All I do is on things like today, I'll take a photo in between all the really nice stuff she posts. I'll do one that's like, this is me, I'm actually a real human being. It's not all well polished and well managed with lots of hashtags. Had a lovely day, whatever. And so I'm balancing the business side of content-wise, but also doing that, because there is no way I would be as consistent or as good or on trend as someone else will be, because I don't understand it.
Yeah, marketing pulls people in. You're doing the sales. That's top of funnel into rest of the funnel.
Exactly, yeah.
And so now when you move into the rest of that funnel, you have relationships to manage. How do you manage a whole bunch of relationships? This is something I'm really bad at. Following up with people, remembering to do that, remembering all the people I've reached out to and when, and it's a lot of cognitive bandwidth. How do we handle a whole bunch of relationships?
You want to start?
Well, my first answer is always going to be a CRM. Like, there are free ones, there are super cheap ones. They're called client relationship management tools. There are free ones.
What are they called?
So you can use HubSpot for free. I don't love it, but it works. There's some free versions of Zoho, which I really like. But Zoho, they have a version that's also quite cheap. Pipedrive is quite cheap. But the honest answer is I don't use one, because I have my own way that works for me, which is I have a conversation with someone, I go into my diary for whenever it is I need to follow up with them, and I put it at the top of my diary, because there is one thing I will look at every single day without fail, and that is my calendar. I have to. And so if 2 weeks' time it says follow up 7, I'm going to follow up with 7. And then once I do it, I'll then move that to the next week. And then if I hear back from you, I can delete it. Great. But if I don't hear back from you, it's already in my diary and I know I'm doing it. And it's actually just one piece of action. Put it in your diary, move it when you've done it. Easy.
Yeah. 2 things. One, it's really reassuring to hear somebody who's deep in sales is not a fan of CRMs because I.
No, I am. I'm a do as I say, not as I do. Until recently, untreated ADHD. Get a CRM, you'll be far more organised.
But I was going to say off the back of that, like I think it's important to have a space to dump a lot of the information that you can't hold on a daily basis. When it comes to the sales side of things, I mean, I can talk for myself personally, I guess. It's very hard to think, I spoke to this person in March, and the last time we spoke about this specific thing, and that was one of 17 different conversations. So in terms of managing that, yeah, definitely 100% get a CRM. And I think I would try and obligate myself to have more touch points. So the calendar trick is something I use as well, which I think is great. My calendar dictates my whole life. So that's one touch point. The other touch point is obviously people that have personal brands on LinkedIn or post on LinkedIn. I will follow their stuff and see what they're doing. And then if time permits, active at events and networking. And this kind of example happened earlier on today. When you meet other people and speak to other people, conversations happen that remind you of others. So earlier on we were talking, and then it's about kind of introducing to a mutual contact, and that whole thing sparks more and more and more. So.
Yeah. It means I'll always think of Ken in a really positive light, not just because he's a nice guy, but because we had a conversation. He's like, I could introduce you to someone really interesting. Now our relationship is like, as long as he does it, forged. No pressure. But I'll follow up to make sure it happens, so I'm not worried.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess for myself and I guess the business, our core clients are founders that are within kind of between seed and Series A. So normally it will be going to events that will have seed and Series A founders, because ultimately, so this is like the growth stage of the startup. So essentially they've kind of raised above £1 million, and they're about to kind of grow their team from 5 to 25 almost overnight. So going to events where they might be at, but less with the intention of go in, sell, and more with the intention of, I will go to events, and I mean, you can look through my LinkedIn, there are so many events I go to just to learn, because I personally can't know everything about the world of startups. Even in this room right now, there are things that I can learn from yourselves and your own personal journeys. So I really enjoy going to these events to actually just sit, take in information. If I make a contact or two, fantastic, but actually I've left my house to learn.
My question was going to be, it sounds like your follow-ups are personal, because you're putting it in your diary, I should follow up now. So how do you guys feel about the automated outreach?
Like AI bots.
Yeah, all of that stuff.
That was actually one of the questions.
Inundating all of our inboxes right now.
Right, so yeah, how do you deal with AI bots?
So,
or do you use them as well, things like that?
I got all my first customer base, this is my dirty secret, through a non-personalised, automated LinkedIn outreach process. And some of the relationships I've got there, I've been working with them for over a year. Some of them have introduced me to more people. And the vast majority of people who responded to it were like, so nice not to get just like automated rubbish. So actually, it really comes down to how good you are at writing a message, because that went out to 2,500 people and I got around 100 to 120 meetings from it. So it can work. Does it get you the best results with the best people? No, I had a lot of really rubbish conversations and I got a lot of really horrible rejections from people. But it definitely does work, because ultimately outreach is a numbers game, because you get 5% response rate on outreach. Whether it's really personalised, might be maybe 7%, but it's low.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that there's no hiding away from it. You're gonna have to do outreach in some capacity. And I personally have the time to, and because I make the time, it's something I think is important. Unless you are so busy and making so much money, if you've pitched someone, why on earth do you need to automate your follow-ups? There's no chance you're that busy. And if you are, then great, doesn't matter if it's low quality and it's just rubbish. But hopefully you've had a conversation with someone, there's something of value you can add every time you message them or call them.
What are those tools that you're using?
So I use Dripify for LinkedIn automation, and I still use it now for different things that I do. I use Apollo.io, the best sales tool you will ever discover. It is my favorite price, which is free. And it does two things. It does lead generation, so it does list building. So you basically go on and say, I want this exact profile of a person, and it tells you who they are, what their email address is, what their phone number is. That's my favorite part. And it also does email sequencing. So you can then send a sequence of emails to those people. It is a fantastic tool, but if you do explore it and use it, you have to be really careful and take the time to learn how to do it properly, because if you spam email, you get a rubbish domain and then you damage your business.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Ken?
Small one on that one, actually, because LinkedIn's changing. So being in the world of content, very much in the world of LinkedIn, they're changing a lot of their policies at the moment. So Dripify and Apollo are getting a bit of a slap on the wrist. So if anyone goes home to go start these things, fantastic tools, start very small.
Yeah.
Start very small. With everything starts very small, but definitely starts small this. And then I'd say, I guess your question was more on kind of automating, I guess.
Especially pre the initial real world contact.
Yeah. What I'd say is I'm not the best person to ask when it comes to kind of like what the process would be. This is the master and expert here, so I'm learning, right? But what I would say is automate everything that isn't important. So easy example, I have time windows. So for example, on the train back home from here, I might have a window of about 30, 40 minutes where I can just do stuff. Saturday is not the optimum time to be sending people emails. So I would just write out probably 20 emails and automate them to all go. If you ever get an email from me at 8:39 in the morning, I wrote that at probably at 2 in the morning or some random time beforehand. But all of my pre-programmed emails go at 8:39. I don't know why it's that time, just for fun. So automate that as much as possible.
But you still would have included your own personalization, relying on AI finding stuff in LinkedIn to
So-
use the personalization.
So leveraging AI, I think is important to do, I guess, the dirty work, you could call it. If there is a way of being able to kind of find out as much information beforehand so you can then make an informed decision on who you speak to, fantastic, do that. The message itself, okay, I'll tell you one that I actually do, which saves me a lot of time. Founder research. I can only get so much information about different founders and what they've achieved. It might take me 2 hours to do that work. It takes ChatGPT all of 2.5 minutes to do like a deep dive to find articles that I was never going to find. So it will give me kind of recent milestones, things that they've achieved. And then when I go in to have that message with them, I'm actually talking from the fact that, oh, they've actually done some really cool stuff that I didn't know about. Yes, I've leveraged AI to find it, but it's still interesting to me and I'll include that in that message. So kind of getting to the core of your question, which sounds less on the automation and more on, should I personalize?
Yeah.
It's a human interaction that you're having. Do you want to have someone come up to you and say, hey, buy this thing? Or do you want someone to come up to you and say, hey, I noticed that these are the things you're interested in. Would you like to have a conversation about this thing? So do as you'd like to be treated, essentially.
Well, yeah, I think it really depends on what the relationship is going to be. Like, for example, if you wanted to get your products into, say, boots, if you're going to really struggle to get like a personal relationship before you have a meeting with like the buyer. Unless you manage to go to like a beauty trade show where the buyers are going to be, then you might be able to have a conversation. But the reality is when you're selling into and trying to have a conversation with someone where it's like, I am selling to you, there's no lying about it. There is nothing more frustrating, and maybe this is a personal frustration, when people try to pretend that they're not going to try and sell something to you.
Yeah.
Like when people are like, so what are your plans for this year, Tash? I'm like, I don't know, why are you asking me? Like, you know, how do you, all this stuff, that's to ask when we're in the meeting. Really your first contact with someone should be, this is how I phrase every single piece of outreach, whether it's a video, voice note, or a message. Notice this thing about you, this personal thing, you've won an award, you blah, 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 which made me realize you probably recognize this problem in your industry. This is the challenge you face, the emotional impact of it. I work with people who are facing those problems so that they get this result. I'm not even saying what I do. I'm just saying I work with them to get this result. Is that something you'd be interested in? No bullshit, no time wasting. Yeah. I've done my research. I've recognized their problem. I offer a solution. Are they interested or not? No one has their time wasted. We can all move on with our lives.
And I think even just to add on to that, like as your business grows, you get less and less time. It becomes very irritating when someone messages you and you're like, what do you want? And they go, just wondering if you had any free time next week, and it's like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You've just
who-
wasted half an hour on a little chat about my weekend.
Exactly. So I think you can be personable without wasting people's time, but you also don't want to go to the other end and just say, hey, buy this from me now, because that also doesn't work.
People will always buy things that is just a spur of the moment. I mean, like, especially if you talk like consumers, they don't always just.
Sorry, I didn't mean consumer.
No, but same with businesses. People will always shop around, especially when you go into like the more corporate world. They have procurement teams where they can only decide on a product they have assessed, gone through an RFP, and they have to go through quite a few of them as well, like different brands. So there's always that safeguarding in place. However, to the first point you made, you are so right. And it's something I'm really interested in, because sales processes and tools and systems are constantly evolving. If you go back to the 90s and the early 2000s, it was all cold calling. And so we all stopped picking up the phone.
Yeah.
Then it moved to email, and we all stopped answering our emails, and spam filters got really strong. Now it's moved to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is now having to put in rules. And like you say, it's all going to be AI personalization, and they're getting there. They're not great, but they're getting there. What has come back? Cold calling.
Calling, yeah.
I do cold calling for all of my clients. I do cold calling for myself. It works. People pick up the phone again.
And I guess people will be
So
surprised.
I think what will happen is something will come back. We were just talking before that one of the next sales campaigns I'm doing, and I do for a lot of my clients, is sending things in the post. Well, now we're going back to the 50s, you know? We send handwritten letters and you get a higher response rate. So I'm dying for the AI chatbot to ruin automated outreach, because in 10, 15 years, I'll be the first one to use it again.
Yeah.
I sometimes think that the same way you have a low trust company culture in some companies, right? Which leads to breakdown in communication. People don't want to talk to each other, productivity drops. I think in many ways we live in a low trust world culture, societal culture. Trust has dropped, I think, in general to an all-time low. And if what we're talking about is the game of building relationships, how does one build good professional relationships that are high trust in such a low trust world? We've kind of covered it, but just to be really clear on the answer.
I've probably got an easier job on this one, because everything that I do is based around that. I think regardless whether you choose to kind of build your own personal brand or not, that's not really the question that I'd kind of throw out there. But more so, if you did choose to build a personal brand, and speaking to your point earlier on about rapport, is that people get to know, like, and trust you before they've met you. So in a world where trust is kind of diminishing, if someone can understand who you are before you walk in the door, then all of a sudden we start to get this real understanding of not just, okay, this is a person that I've seen enough times and yeah, they do something that's really cool. It's more so, I've seen this person enough times to know that they might be able to help me. As selfish as that might sound, then reaching out to that person, it becomes a way nicer, I guess, interaction. So I would say there's definitely a lot of power, agnostic of what I do, there's definitely a lot of power in what a personal brand can bring you. And it doesn't have to be you posting every single day on TikTok, doing dances. It can be very low level of you just posting some text posts. Some of the most interesting posts that I've seen that have gone viral are literally people saying, here are the last 10 years of my life, here's all the mistakes that I've made, avoid them, but it led me to build a business that's 10 million, 20 million, 30 million recurring income every single year. So there are ways to approach it in which where it's not so much, you don't always have to be front facing. You can leverage AI if you want to leverage AI, but more so I think that you want to build trust before you've met someone rather than doing the whole, hey, my name is Ken, you've never met me before, but here's all the things that I've done, you can trust me, we can maybe do business together. It's a longer process.
And from a sales side, I would say it's really about what do you say that you can do and what can you actually do. And it doesn't matter whether you're offering consulting or if it's service-based or if you're selling a SaaS tool or a house. If you are a liar and if you missell something and if you end up with a customer who is not going to be happy, that will end badly for you no matter what. And so I always say to people when we sit down and we're having an actual sales pitch, I always say, look, this is very much for you as much as it is for me, because if at the end of this I don't think I can help you or I don't think I'm the right fit, I will send you in the opposite direction. And that's why I have partnerships with lots of marketing agencies, brand storytellers, so that I can say, you actually don't need me right now. I'm not right for you. You need to go speak with this person, and they will then, in the future, when they need sales support, they will come back to me, one would hope.
Alrighty, cool. Thank you both very much. This pretty much brings us to the end of the conversation and of our time slot, but this is still an episode of my podcast called Lost and Searching at the same time. And there's a closing question I ask everyone who comes on the show, so I'm going to ask you both the same question. And it isn't super relevant to what we've talked about, or maybe it will be. Let's find out. The question is, what is the number one question in your life that you are still searching for the answer to?
The difficulty with this is I've answered this before and I can't remember my answer.
It's going to look really bad.
It's going to look incredibly bad if I'm like, well, I think it's this. I'm not searching for the other thing anymore.
Well, but that's the thing. Life updates. Things change. So actually, that'd be totally fine.
Okay. I see you're looking at me, so you
No, I can go actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I need a little more time, so if you go first. Yeah.
I can go, but only because this was a question I asked myself this morning, because I've had a really intense month. And I'm doing things that I would normally not do, which is like come and do, work-related stuff on a weekend. Usually I'm really like, but it was worth it. It was worth it. Sometimes you gotta. And it was, would I be happy doing this for the rest of my life? Is this the kind of life I would want to be living 30, 40 years? Will I be happy with that? And the answer was yes. So that's always good. That's a relief. That's my question.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mine now feels like a cop-out because it's on a similar vein. But earlier this week I did a webinar, and in it I said as a question to everyone that was on it, all the founders, if you had 50,000 people looking at you right now, what would change? What would you do differently? And as I asked the question, I said to myself, oh God, actually, would I change anything? And there's the urge to kind of be like, I'm going to change like this, I'm going to tweak this, and it's like, no, the core element is still the core element. So I think my question that I try to ask myself in different ways, but that's the best way I've been able to articulate it, is if you had 50,000 eyes looking at you, if you had 10 million in the account right now, what things would you do differently? And actually, how can you start living that today? Personal life or business life doesn't really matter, but if you're someone who wants to travel the world and for some reason the funds aren't there, get on the tube to the end of Victoria Line and see something new. Just travel within the context that you can. So I think, the question is, what would life look like if things were amplified by 1,000?
I love it.
That's a good question.
Thank you both.
I hope that's what I said last time.
Yeah, it's not, but that's fine. Thank you both so much. I appreciate you. Can we get a big round of applause, please? Woo! Well, look at you, making it to the end of the episode. Welcome. There's a lot more for you to do. If you're still here, there's a full playlist on YouTube down below. There's a recommended video probably somewhere around the screen or down below, and so much more. Give us a follow, help share if you're here. Hey, maybe you enjoyed it. And look, this show only grows with your help. So again, I know you're probably bored of hearing it, but it would mean the world to me if you help us out and paid it forward and shared it around. And hey, you never know how this will help someone else. So thank you so much for being here, for being a part of it. Lots of love, and here is to your success. See you soon.